Today's podcast is brought to you by Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance. Accidents happen. Without the right coverage from the right insurance company, damage to your automobile can be a real financial hit. That's why Kentuckians appreciate the competitive rates and personal service they get from Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance. When the unexpected happens, count on us to help you get back on the road. To request a free quote, find your local KFB insurance agent at mykfbagent.com. Kentucky Farm Bureau, big on commitment. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going well. Very exciting podcast today.
Okay.
This is the first episode of season 2 of Kentucky Farm Life Between the Rows. So this is a big day. We're starting the year fresh, all kinds of podcasts. So season 2. So
we made it.
They haven't cut the show yet. They must like it.
The big hook to yank us out.
Yeah, they were doing something right. Or all of a sudden the mics don't work one day. But we do. We're in season 2, episode 1. So we're chugging right along. Hope to have a big year. We've got some fun plans this year.
We do. We're doing things, I don't want to say different. We're doing more and better.
Yes.
Because I think we like the vibe.
Yeah. I think we're maybe going to do these a little more on the road.
Yeah.
We'll say that. And obviously we want people to come to our cool little studio and come do some recording. So big season ahead, and we have a great guest today. To start us off, you tell a little about our guest.
So this one's fun, and you'll hear it at the end of the podcast, but here's your little tease. Josh's wife was my high school ag teacher, Miss Lancaster. Mm-hmm. So I guess I can call her Christy now. I'm grown. It's weird. She will be Miss Lancaster for the rest of my life. But yeah, she was my ag teacher, and you would have thought we were all just goobers because none of us knew that, like, the farming operation she lived on. And so as I've been in my professional career, I've gotten to really meet Josh and talk to him, and it's incredible. And I'll be honest, you don't get down to the nitty gritty when you talk to people at a commodity meeting. His story is really cool.
Yeah. He's got a great story. And he's another great leader. One of these just great voices of agriculture, as we talk about, and a partner organization. And so it's really just a neat chat we have today. And I think the listeners are going to really like it a lot.
Yeah, so welcome to season 2. And without further ado, I'm Renee Carrico.
And I'm Matt Hilton.
And this is Between the Rows. All right, we've got Josh Lancaster with us. How are you, sir?
Doing well.
Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background. Grow up on a farm. Tell us a little about your background.
So I did. I grew up on a farm. Both my grandparents' families were farmers in the Meade County region of the state, primarily around Flaherty. My father was a bit of an outcast and made the big move and jumped across the border into a neighboring county, which was practically illegal at the time. He became a Breckenridge County resident down around the Irvington area along Highway 60. And that's where I grew up on a farm. Knew from day one that I wanted to farm. Mm-hmm. And, of course, that was trying to survive the 80s. I was born in the early 80s. And I will never forget some of the conversations between my parents and the farm lenders. They were pretty rough. Mm-hmm. We survived it, family survived it, and my father chose to sell the farm, and I thought the world was coming to an end. Mm-hmm. As a young man, I loved the farm, loved to be on the farm, everything outdoors. Wasn't exactly the most friendly with school, didn't want to be in school, wanted to be out on the farm, right? So I made my choice as a pretty young person that I would grow up and find a way to farm. My grandparents still farmed. I had some uncles that farmed, cousins. So I still enjoyed the farm. I was able to be on their farms, help them, but it wasn't mine. And I chose to go to college, find a way to, I'll never forget telling my mom, I said, I'm going to find a job that pays enough I can afford to farm. And of course, she laughed, and good luck with that. I didn't know what it meant at the time, but because I didn't quite understand the capital expense that it took. I mean, I was quickly learning, but that was my goal. So I went to college, went to school at Murray State University. Really enjoyed my time there. Met a lot of really good folks. Got the education that we're supposed to get at college, right? Most of that comes from doing and learning, not so much what you learn sitting in the classroom. But I went, put in my time, and I did. I left college and went to Racine, Wisconsin. Went to work for Case IH in New Holland, CNH Capital, CNH Industrial, the whole 9 yards. So I was telling people I had a very, very prominent mechanical background. My granddad done some work with Ford Motor Company on the tractor side. My dad was very mechanical, so I love mechanics. I was taught mechanics from a young age. I was taught to weld. I was one of those kids that probably shows up in the safety pictures of the videos, at 6 years old in a t-shirt and shorts, learning how to weld. I was that kid.
I love it.
So I got to learn all that good stuff, and I took that on further, and I became a team member for mid-range tractors from Canada, the U.S., Puerto Rico, Mexico, telling people how to repair tractors at a dealership. That was what I got to do, and that was where I thought I needed to be to find a decent job, stay in agriculture, and find my way onto somebody, somewhere, someday farm. And so that was my goal.
Mm-hmm.
It only took 10 months. I left college. I was only there 10 months, and I got a couple phone calls from one came from my advisor. I had an awesome advisor at Murray State University. His name was Dr. Dwayne Driscoll. He has since retired, but he called and said, "Hey, I got this gentleman in Western Kentucky that's looking for a farm manager, somebody to lead his farm. He's getting up in the years, doesn't have somebody to do that, and they're interested in finding somebody. And I threw your name out there, and they want to meet you." So I flew home, came down, met with him. At the same time, had some other opportunities within the state, but I wanted to be on a farm. And 2 weeks later, I was coming back to farm. I was quitting my job up there, and I'll never forget when I called and told the family and parents what I was doing. My mother's exact words were, "Just sit down and the moment will pass."
Oh, wow.
Because she loved us being on a farm and that, but she also understood the struggles that came with it. And there I was, college graduate. I had worked my way through college. I didn't have any debt really. I was in good shape. I had a good job. And she's like, "You've made it. You're in her eye." As a parent, she's looking at it as, "I've done my job. You've made it. You're supporting yourself. You're not fussing about being broke. You're not fussing about money. All the stuff that a parent's supposed to want for their kid, I had, right?" And I quit it to go farm. Mm-hmm. and it was really just an alignment of probably galaxies, not just stars, because the day I landed here back in Western Kentucky, corn went from the year before that, in the $3s to $4 corn, right? So we experienced $4 corn for an extended period of time for the first time about that range. That was 06, 07, and things were looking pretty positive on the farming side of the world, and really have been for us ever since. I came into I was running this farm as a 23-year-old, I guess you would say, and that at the time, a lot of people would question, can a 23-year-old do that? And I was like, well, I don't know that all can, but I feel like I can. and the gentleman that I partnered with when I came here, his name was Lawrence Huss. We lost him a couple of years ago, but he was a very young man at heart and never wanted to slow down, never wanted to quit, and was always interested in the new technology. What are we doing next? Not have a very positive outlook. Did not like conflict, did not like arguing. It was always, what can we do next and what's next that's better? And I learned a lot from that because I probably didn't have quite that positive of an attitude going into it. And it helped me a lot with my employees, my directions on marketing, my directions on inputs, a lot of things I didn't even realize what I was learning from him at that time until we got, 10, 15 years down the road and got to see things evolve. But we had an awesome relationship. We never had a crossword, which is really hard to believe on a farm, probably. We never had an argument. But he was also a big enough person to step back and realize I'm not done, but my time running this is come to an end here. I can't, managing the people had gotten above him, and some of the other technology and paperwork and computers had gotten well above him, and he was willing to step back and let somebody do it. And that's probably one of his biggest accomplishments as a person, because not very many of us could probably do that.
Yeah.
I came into this farm, we were running 6,000 to 7,000 acres, and we have more than doubled it in the time I've been here. And most people, I don't know that I could step back right now and say, here you go, do this, let's see if it works. That's a very hard thing to do. And I hope someday I get there. That's the goal, right? I tell everybody my goal in life is to be able to raise a family. They're happy, healthy, and I want to walk in one day and light a fire and leave, and it's somebody else's responsibility to put out. That's when I know that I've got the right people in the right place to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
Because I would tell people for years, your job is to just put out fires.
Yeah.
Just keep everything, find the next problem and fix it.
Right.
And before you get that fixed, somebody's gonna call you with the next one before you got it done. You don't have to worry about it. It'll find you.
This seems like this was a huge leap of faith. I don't want to take your mom's side, but there was a little bit. How did that feel for you? Was it scary, or were you just so connected to this idea that it wasn't going to be stressful for you?
To be honest with you, I wasn't scared at all. I had no fear of my work ethic. I knew what I was, 100-hour work week was just normal, like that, no big deal. And the successes that came, I look back I tell a lot of farmers, just because you work hard doesn't give you the right to be successful. We've watched a lot of guys work their butt off and their tail off year in, day out, and aren't successful, not to the lack of their work, just timing, markets, weather. There's a lot of things that they can't control, and work doesn't get you there. And I still say some of mine was, you'd rather be lucky any day than good. Part of it could be luck, but I also believe you create your own luck.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it was a leap, but to me, I didn't have anything to lose was also my thought. I'll never forget sitting down across from a lender one day. We don't work with a lot of small town community banks because they'll look at you and go, well, you're already above our scale. We can't really service you anyway. And I'll never forget sitting down across the table from one time, and I was young at the time. There wasn't a lot of stuff in my name. I didn't have a lot to lose. And they said, well, what are you thinking? I said, I want every dollar you'll give me, and I'm going to go spend it. and of course, as a lender, like, oh Lord, this doesn't work, because they want to micromanage, blah, whatever. And that was not their mindset. And they said, well, what do you mean? Explain that. And I said, I'm going to buy everything I can because I have nothing to lose. And they're thinking, great, now we got all this risk and you don't care. But I've always been a very thorough numbered spreadsheet. I tell my wife every day, I said, numbers run this world. I'm a number, you're a number. We don't like it, but it's the truth. And that's how I operate things. And it's even went as far as saying you could argue that our marriage was a business transaction. And she's like, huh? I said, well, let me explain this.
That's dangerous. Oh, yeah.
And once I explain it, she's like, you're not wrong, but it's still not right. And I said, well, you're never going to tell me I'm right, so I accept that part. But it's I've always ran things by numbers and efficiency, so I've never really worried about what my financial restrictions were going to be, or whether they were going to hold me back or take me because once we were established and proven, I've never had the issue of somebody trying to micromanage our loan situation or our money situation, and we haven't put ourselves in the position to have that done either.
Yeah,
and that makes that mindset of operating entirely different, because you don't worry about, I got to pay this bill this day, I got to sell this grain that day to pay it. You get to operate strictly on where you can calculate you think the best time is to sell, or when you look at world markets and, I need to hold, I need to sell, I need to change my situation, as opposed to being strapped for cash 24/7 and having to be forced to do something, because that's what I remember growing up as a kid, is we got to pay our bills, and then we got to borrow money to pay our taxes.
Yeah.
I remember that. I clearly remember that, and I said I never want to be in that spot. And because I remember as a young kid sitting down in a bank with my dad to borrow the money to pay our taxes to do it again next year.
God.
right.
And that wasn't a lot of fun. And I don't want to be there. I don't want to raise my kids in that environment. I want to put my kids in an environment where I show them I'm already investing for them, and let's teach you how to do this. And yes, it's a very huge success to be able to be in that spot and to raise my kids in that spot, and not have to worry quite as much. Now, saying that, it could all go haywire for me as well, right? I'm not protected by any means, but my operating strategies and procedures have to keep myself grounded and make sure that we don't move back into the realm of that situation, because it is kind of odd. I'm a very unique story in mine and Lawrence's story from where I came from, my parents, because technically our farm is only a second generation Kentucky farm. Although I can tell you it's been running since 1930 or so when he was born, because he borrowed money as a 12-year-old to put out a crop.
That's incredible.
I mean, think about that. Like, to think where we've come from. Everybody thought his dad died when he was very young, 2 or 3 years old. So he was raised by his mom, and he had a sister. And he looked at it as his responsibility to take care of his mom and his sister. They had this little old farm in Seabury, and he borrowed money from a local bank as the 12, I think he was 12, not 13, to put out his first crop, all done by hand. So for him to be able to tell me the stories of starting like that, and him being able to live till he was 90, to see, remember one of his first crops was Lespedeza, seeded by hand, harvested by hand, tied by hand, fed to something, right, so he could eat it. And by the time he passed, we're talking the amount of acres we can cover and equipment and the grain bin facilities. I don't know that there'll ever be another generation see that kind of change.
Yeah.
Your perspective is,
go ahead.
No, your perspective is just so unique. When we talk about, which I'm 30, almost 31, getting old. But anyway,
Yeah.
We always talk about the perspective of the 80s. And my generation hears those that lived through the 80s, like people that are your parents' age, that are always like, if we made it through the 80s, you can do it. I think it is a unique perspective. And you're not the first one I've heard say it that grew up in the 80s. It's a different perspective. Yeah, I don't know which one's easier, being the parent sitting across from the lender hearing the hard conversation, or being the kid that watches their parents go through it and know they don't want to do that to their own kid. I mean, it wasn't easy for anyone, but it is a unique perspective. But I do want to jump back. When you talk about the mechanical side and you talked global, and this is one of the coolest things with a lot of the opportunities you guys have with corn growers. Talk to me about that multi-country. I know you only did 10 months, but did you travel to any of those countries, or were you just, what's the perspective you gained from working with Canada, Mexico, Puerto Rico? I mean, that had to gain some perspective for a 23-year-old right out of college who knew they wanted to farm, living in Wisconsin, a whole different culture, and then trying to understand how other people have needs to fix tractors that are the same, different. I mean, that had to be really impactful to you before you went back to the farm.
It was, for sure. When I went there, of course, I had a lot of learning to do on their side as well. I understood systems. And if you understand systems, when I say systems, electrics, hydraulics, mechanical, gearing, it's all the same, in my opinion, around the world and all types of equipment. It's just that you got to get down to the specifics to fix it. But understanding systems help, and you can relate to those people. And working with what you would call foreigners, because the majority of the tractors I was servicing were actually built in Basildon, England.
Oh.
And because a lot of the mid-range blue red tractors were built in Basildon, still are today. The largest tractor factories in the world is in Basildon, England. And so we would have to work during the nighttime hours with the crew that was awake in England to work on things that were more in depth or hard to fix, things that we need to go to the factory for, straight to the engineer for. And it taught me the ways of business that are entirely different than a farm, and how the business world operated, and creating those relationships with those people. When you're talking tractors, nobody cares where you're from, what country you are, what language you speak. Everybody's happy. You're talking tractors, right? I mean, if you like it, you like it. And it's no different than a UK basketball fan talking to a basketball fan in Australia. They like sports. They're going to talk the same language. They're going to understand each other. And it was really comical. You'll get a kick out of this. I, of course, moved up to Wisconsin from Kentucky. And as you can imagine, I didn't talk like Wisconsinites, right? We didn't speak the same. And there was a lot of transplanted younger folks on these teams, the tractor team, the combine team. We all sat in the same building, and the excavator team, dozer. And there was a lot of transplanted people but most of them were from the Midwest. They weren't from Kentucky. And so I know the guys down in the South of the Delta, the red track, there's a lot of red four-wheel drives that were sold at the time to land level dirt and rice fields, cotton fields, all that through the Delta. And when some of those, I won't name that, certain particular dealerships would call, and big time Southern accents, even all the way to Cajun. And it got comical because they would say, line 4s for Josh because he's the only one that can speak Southern. It got to be.
I love that.
And it was. I'm like, guys, we're not even out of the country border, and y'all can't talk to each other. Because I could manage to talk to a guy from Michigan and a guy from deep South Louisiana. The guy from Minnesota could not talk to the guy from Louisiana. They could every other word. They were like, huh, what? They couldn't even talk to each other.
Yeah. And they think Southerners are stuck in their ways. Yeah, see, we can blend.
Right.
See?
We can blend.
Oh yeah. Yep.
That's right. That's right.
But it was just funny to see that relationship. I'm like, guys, we're not even speaking a different language. What about when the French? When Prince Edward Island calls you, they're speaking French.
Yeah.
I said, I feel like some of you could talk French better than you could talk Cajun. But, it was just a big eye-opening experience for me. Got to meet a lot of really good people. Worked with some really smart people. I love being in a room who are smarter people than me. I always hope I'm the dumbest person in the room. It doesn't bother me one bit. Sit back, watch, learn, listen. Because when you can surround yourself with those kind of people, you can always learn something.
Oh, for sure.
And that was the case a lot in those groups. I mean, everybody has their spots they don't need to be, but for the most part, when you get on that level, I was the new guy. I was a greenhorn. I was the young one. I was the less knowledgeable person in the room, most situations. But it was really good to actually understand how the systems work of the farm to the dealership to the manufacturer, to understand how problems get fixed, see it done real world, because it changed my perspective. And I've tried to explain it a little bit to people. You've always heard somebody say, I wish I had the engineer here that designed this.
That line is what got my husband into engineering.
Yes.
Was his dad cussing engineers working on a tractor, and he said,
Yep.
"I'm going to fix this for people like my dad."
Yeah.
Become an engineer. I'm gonna fix this.
So it's funny because that was kind of my line of direction. One time I thought I'll be an engineer and go do that, and I figured I liked being outside too much to be an engineer. Once I found out I had to live in an office behind a computer, I figured out that wasn't for me. So I said maybe a project engineer.
There you go.
But it was very interesting. I was like, oh, by the way, I can get you that guy's number. Do you want to call him? Because when you're just 1 or 2 years removed, you still know all those people.
Right.
It gives you a whole different respect, a whole different way of looking at it and understanding where we're headed. And I am completely, I'm one of them people that have sat here on the farm today. I mean, yes, we have every latest piece of technology we can probably buy for our farm. And I'm sitting here coming from that world saying, I can see where if somebody brings out a certain piece of equipment that's simple, there's a market for it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we have driven things to be so complicated that nobody can work on it. And we have this big argument about the whole Right to Repair Act and what can you do, what can't you do. And people are finally just going to go, give me something I can repair and I don't have to worry about it.
When people are buying older model tractors, and I'm in cattle country, just so they don't have certain pieces on it, so they know they and their business partner can both work on that tractor in the winter when they're putting hay out. That's when you know we may have gotten a little far. I told somebody the other day, they're like, well, I got to go that model back because I don't want to add that such and such in there. And I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about because my husband, I could tell you the year and I could tell you the piece they don't want on it. I'm not going to call anybody out, but every time he's on Marketplace looking for the new tractor for hay, feeding hay in the winter, he's like, no, because if I could maybe work on it, but Dad can't. And I'm like, see, that's where we're losing it. So I hear you there. I got a question for you. You feel like a lifetime learner. And I think that's the quality of very successful people, or people that have opportunities to continue succeeding is being a lifetime learner. How has it been for you as someone who came in soaking up everything you could get from anyone around you? You're now kind of in the age and in the leadership roles and in the industry, the scale of farm. You're the mentor now. You're the one people want to ask the questions to and learn from you. Is that a weird transition for you to understand that now you're in the position that those people were for you when you were 23? I mean, is that a weird transition, or do you feel like it's naturally happened?
I think it's the weirdest part. So I'll tell you I think it's naturally happened. The difference is, and I was always, I won't say I was smarter than my age, but I was more mature than my age. And all of my friends were always, I won't say friends, the people that I associated with, hung out with, talked to on a regular, were 10 to 15 to 20 years older than me all the time. And I don't know if it's just because of common habits, knowledge, what they did, or what I wanted to do. A lot of it was because of what I was trying to do. My friends weren't, or just weren't engaged in that situation. I mean, let's face it, in Western Kentucky, one out of a whole bunch of kids only have an opportunity to do something on a farm, So it's
right.
What few friends, some of the friends I did have, they weren't even on a farm. They'd come from a farm. So it wasn't even like we had common things there to talk about beyond the normal day-to-day life or hanging out. I didn't do a lot of hanging out. I feel like it's been more natural. The odd thing was, I have no doubt that people doubted me because they looked at my age and went, well, they're too young. He's too young and I'm guilty of it too. Your experiences can only be so much at a certain age.
Right.
I went through a whole lot quickly. And once people start to talk to you or open up, then they realize, then the floodgate opens and the questions come.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Once they figure out that you do have a little bit of knowledge of what you're talking about, and you're not just opening your mouth to confirm you're dumb. Then the floodgates open, and we have started hosting some stuff here on the farm. We had one of the extension field days here this summer on the travel, and we have I've had probably 3 or 4 foreign visits of U.S. Grains Council groups, and once you get to talking to these people, the questions just, they don't stop. And it's great because I love it. It's interacting. It's good. I can learn from them. We probably learn as much from them as they do from us. And I don't think anybody at all, once they're there, once they see your farm and see your operation, understand what you're doing, that age thing disappears really quick.
For sure.
Because I'm standing there talking about what we're doing, and I stand there and I tell everybody my right and my left hand is another guy that's 5 years younger than me, my brother. I don't really point to an older person. Lawrence isn't here anymore, and he even, in some of those situations, he'd gotten where he wasn't around anyway. But it's kind of eye opening, and the opportunity is what came to kind of force me into doing things at a faster rate and learning things at a younger age than a lot of people get to. And I blame a lot of what I'm talking about doing at a young age on farmers that don't allow their manager or kid to do it. We want to see, and one of our goals through corn growers as an association is to promote the next generation, whatever that might be. But we also want to try to develop the farmer younger, because the American way of developing a farmer is he works for granddad and dad. Granddad passes. Dad's now kind of in charge. Is, maybe not. Maybe they are together. And then the son never accepts much responsibility until he's like 60, 70 years old, if dad lives to be 80 or 90.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he's already at retirement age. His kids are already moving off into college, maybe come back from college. And there's really no good control. There's not a good path forward. Everybody wants to call it succession planning. I think it needs to start way before succession planning. You better find a path to bring these people back with knowledge and let them expand their knowledge and operation of a business if you want it to succeed.
I had somebody, a very good friend of mine on Instagram, say that. She posted a thing with her kids, and he's little. I mean, he's like 4. And she said, let them do the hard things and make yourself understand it's going to take longer. And I thought that was and you could relate. Your kids are young. We always talk about, they'll be the grain cart driver, or, they'll haul something here or there, but they were fencing, and you talk about the most painstaking video to watch was watching this kid try to clip a fence with a pair of cutting pliers, and they kind of barely helped him at the end. But it's so true. Like, if it'll be faster if I just do it. It'll be faster if I just do it. If you don't let them start getting a help in those little bitty decisions when they're little bitty, then all they see themselves is just a farmhand to help you drive something here or there. And so you're exactly right. If we can start them younger, what a natural transition for them. That's like my word of the day, apparently. But naturally, they just kind of, they become into more decisions, or they feel a part of the operation. I mean, you probably see that, with kids all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's every industry, but certainly in agriculture. I mean, so many of these places are family farms, and so you should probably get your family kind of invested early and teach them some of this stuff. So I agree, yeah.
So I got a question. Oh, go ahead.
No, I think a lot of it, some of them are probably better at letting them do the labor than they are the business side.
Agreed.
And that's where we see, I mean, what probably, I have no statistical knowledge of this, but I'm going to guess more than 50% of the failures are not because of labor, because of lack of understanding of business or making a bad decision financially. And you've got to find a way to get these people involved with this. The younger, the better.
Yeah.
If it started when they're in high school, give them a responsibility that's a financial task, not if it's managing people, if it's managing money, if it's managing the bookwork, whatever, it needs to be something more than just labor. If you plan on them being your succession plan. Yeah. You don't tell them when they're 60, hey, here you go. It's all yours,
Yeah.
And they go, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, and it has to make you more comfortable to pass it on when your kid actually can do all the things you can do. It's just an easier transition altogether. Let's talk a little about briefly about the scale of your farm. What is that labor problem or plan for you? How does that look on a farm of your scale?
So So going back 5-6 years ago, we had run into what I would call a labor wall. It was like a hiring freeze. Like you couldn't hire anybody because you couldn't get anybody to apply. You couldn't poach anybody, you couldn't anything. And for one, farms we had to, so the others, you had to adjust and catch up to inflationary income, cost, everything. You had to be willing to pay, right? You had to come up with benefits. You had to have a advantage or a tactic to get somebody to leave where they were. And I don't care if that's being versatile with their work hours or what their kids do. Everybody has to be treated different. And I say that with context, but every employee is different.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be the guy that thought everybody should be treated the same. If they can't do it, they can't do it. Tough. And that's not the case. We have found that the lady that here in the office that helps us, that runs my office and manages, I tell her she's our HR department. There is no other one. She's it. There's nobody else to talk to. But every individual person's different. They all have different needs. They all have different wants and asks. And yes, it's a little bit of a headache to cater to it. I'm not saying that you go above and beyond and you go get them an ice cream cone when they want it. It's the things about their kids and the day that they might need to come in late or when they need to go to the bank or when you have to treat them all different. And yes, it might look like favoritism from time to time, but they're all happier. When a person's fed and doing what they want, they're happy, right? They don't worry so much about what somebody else is doing. And we ran into not being on hire, and we went at H-2A routes. We use multiple H-2A workers from South Africa every year. They're here 10 months a year, with 2 months free through the winter. They go home for Christmas, New Year's, come back in February. They call this home now. We've had some now that'll be coming back for their 5th year. This is more home to them than South Africa. But that was a lot of our labor fix. We still have a good mix of people from right here local, and we're always looking to try and hire somebody local. It's really hard to find somebody that wants to work the hours we do, is what it comes down to. They tell you they like the money, but then when it comes time to really do it, it starts wearing on them. We used to work, when I was first here, we used to work some really crazy hours. And as we grew, I had to quit because I was fearful of getting somebody hurt. Mm-hmm. Because you can't ask a guy to work till 3 or 4 in the morning, sleep 2 hours and come back. I would do it. My brother would do it, some others, and you learn who can and can't real quick. You just look at a guy's face after he done it one night, and he can't do that.
Right.
And I just could not, as we got to, we were doing tiling, excavating, we run poultry, broiler chicken houses, and then trying to do the row crop thing as well, doing the actual work to try to make some money. And doing all that, we were going to wear some people out too quick, too fast, and it's all I've known. It's what I love to do. I don't consider it work. So I had to develop and change my mindset of, this farm isn't your employees. They see this different. They got to be treated different, and showing them the respect of that they can come and go as they need to take care of their personal life, especially through the winter, the heat of summer, giving those guys a little bit of freedom. We got some that can't even manage it on their own. They just tell us when they can or can't be there, and we'll say, okay, that's fine. And we just adjust around it. We try to keep enough people around if we can do that, so that it's not like I have to tell them, no, you can't go do that, especially if it's off season. I know there's not really an off season, but as long as we're not planting or harvesting, let me put it that way.
There you go. Well,
because there's no off season, that's for sure.
So you've mentioned your brother a few times, and I do want to give you a chance to kind of give a shout out to the family that is on the farm with you. We talked about all the family that farmed before, and those that still did even after your parents sold out. But talk to me about the structure of it now. your brother's with you. You have a wife and a couple kids. How does that kind of play out? And I'm assuming you've got some full-time guys that are there all the time, but do you and your brother do different portions of the farm? I know there's some that they manage mechanics and the other person manages books and somebody else maybe manages production. How do you guys break it down? Or are you guys both kind of a jack of all trades?
There's not really anything neither of us probably couldn't do, but I will tell you, you can kind of break farms down into the kind of people they are. And we, as in me and him, we're the primary operators of this farm.
Okay.
We are procedural people. We are process people. You could pick out a certain farmer and say he's an agronomist farmer. Like his focus is agronomy.
Right.
Terrible at mechanics, or he's terrible at managing people. We're processes. We are efficient. We drive on efficiency. And I kind of wish that one of us was a little bit different in this aspect at sometimes. And if either of us are different, I'm probably more book work and spreadsheet than he is, even though he'll sit down and make a spreadsheet too. So we're not really that much different.
Yeah.
And it's good and bad because we don't argue about anything, we see it the same. But that also kind of puts our blinders on at times and makes us have to look outside that box to see something different from a different perspective.
Yeah.
But he stays with the planting crew and harvest crew, spring and fall. I do not. I joke with him all the time. I said, I'll trade with you any day you want to trade because I get all the other stuff. and you can imagine what that can be from day to day, right?
Right.
I even get the problems in those crews because he gets to keep them running. I get to go fix them.
Yeah, you're probably not getting much more sleep than he is, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh Lord, no, it's rough. I still kind of consider we have a pretty large grain facility. We haul, 100% of our grain comes here. We don't take anything to an elevator. I still stick to that pretty close in the fall. I'll have people at it, but I make sure that dryer is running the way it needs to because it is number one priority on this farm is the grain dryer and the grain system. In the spring, it's a planter. In the fall, it's the dryer and the grain legs. Because that's what shuts everything down if you stop. So I still stick pretty close to that. I don't venture too far away from that system to make sure it's operating as it should. We like to harvest both crops at the same time in the fall, so there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of things going on. But I've got a wife at home with 2 kids. My wife's a teacher. She's been an ag teacher for years. She has moved into administration as of late, but so she has a good, she understands the farm. We have no home fights over the farm, which is awesome. It's never, I told you that you got to sum up our marriage as a business transaction. And I talked to her before we got married and I said, look, you and my kids are number one priority, but there's times you're not going to feel that.
Yeah.
You're going to think it's just the farm. But we have never had a fight over the farm.
That's
never
incredible.
had an argument.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. I mean, and it's kudos to her for understanding that and living it and actually doing it. It's one thing to say it, but to actually do it is another, because I remember that from a kid, right? Like I remember that being a problem and I did not want that to be a burden to my family or the farm, either one, right? And luckily my kids love it too. They love to be here. I don't know if either one of them will farm. I don't really care if they farm. I'm not going to force them to farm. That's their choice. But I'd love it if they do. But I have a awesome secretary, office manager. So I tell everybody I have a home wife, I have a work wife, and they get along really well. So you can imagine how much freedom I get.
Right.
It's not much. So there's nothing. I couldn't pull the wool over anybody's eyes. I promise you.
Yeah.
But she does a miraculous job in our office and managing the day-to-day finances and book work. So between her and myself and my brother, you could say that we operate the farm as a group. And my brother and I actually farm in a general partnership setting. That's how we farm. And this is as strange as all this story kind of is to people, it's really strange when I say my dad also works for me.
Oh, there you go. What a full circle
Yep,
moment there.
So our father is on the farm. You will never get him to leave because he loves farming as much as me, but he's just trying to make a financial decision that he thought was right for his family when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right.
Did he regret it? Absolutely. Do I regret it? Absolutely. But also, hindsight, had he not done that, I would probably still be trying to carve out a living of what I thought I was supposed to do wherever we were at, and probably not be in the situation I am today.
Yeah.
I probably would not have went to college. I probably would not, I wouldn't have had all those experiences that I have had he not made the choice he made. So and he's been here for, let's see, he's been back here on the farm with us for over 10 years.
Cool.
And loves it. I mean, he runs combine for us, runs planter. He's here every day. Like I said, we'll probably bury him here on it. It's probably where he'll die. So yeah, it's been awesome for our family. We couldn't replace. You couldn't have dreamed it any better. But it was never the story we thought we'd have. So it's been really good.
Tell us. So when did you learn about the Corn Growers Association, and what was it about it that made you want to be a part of it? Obviously, you have corn on your farm, but like, what was it about it that, like, why that organization and why get so involved that you're part of the leadership now?
So I didn't come from a family, really. Neither sides of my family, my grandparents, mom, dad, really came from anything that was real active within an organization or a group beyond just the normal day-to-day. Or my grandma's in homemakers. That's the biggest thing I ever seen her go do. It was all just small local stuff, right? Nobody. Biggest thing my dad did was, as far as organization, which it wasn't his personality, but they did get him to do the Southern States board at one time, and I seen him do that, and there were some things I realized he liked about it. But for me, when I came here, I've always been a little bit interested in the whole political, financial, business side, like how it all has to merge and how it all has to work. And it was really just more interest in trying to understand it to be better at what I need to do. Not that I wanted to do it. But when I came here, Lawrence was hugely involved with national wheat growers. I mean, he spent time on his own dime and money in Washington lobbying for the wheat growers in the country, whether it be one in Kansas or be one here in Kentucky. He was there working for all of them, and he really enjoyed it. Put in his own hard sweat and equity to try to better that group and better the world for a farmer. And I seen that and realized that it came with its problems. It came with some stress, and it came with some things. You might be put in some situations you didn't understand or weren't great at, but somebody's got to do it. Because if you don't do it, the other side of what you're fighting for will be there to take your spot, take your limelight, and get what they want.
Yep.
And I still say that's true to this day. Even if you're terrible at telling your story and telling what you need or what your struggles were or what your successes are, if you don't do it, somebody else will. And that's what I was actually asked at years before I actually done it to do it. I said, guys, I don't have the people in place on my farm that I feel that I can step away even for a few days at a time, a few times a year. Because I didn't trust that my operation would run as seamlessly as I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually put them off a little bit and said, you're going to have to wait. And they come back around second or third time and said, okay, I think we're there. I can do this. Because once I'd done it, I didn't want to just go to a couple meetings a year and say I've done it and call it good. You need to get involved. You need to read the emails. You need to be on Zoom calls. You need to be in the meeting. You need to make a trip to Washington. I go a couple times a year to Washington, typically at least once, sometimes twice. You've got to put your butt in the seat in front of the right people.
Mm-hmm.
And And if you don't, I'm not saying you're a waste of time, but there really isn't a lot of point doing it. Just to go see it done doesn't gain the system anything. It gains you knowledge if you want to go see how it works. But if you don't get engaged and get active, you don't get anything done. And I know that we all feel nobody gets anything done in Washington, right? But all you can do, and I don't know any other way to put this, is to keep throwing stuff against the wall and something will finally stick.
Yep.
And I hate to say that, but that's what it takes. It's the same thing with some of the things we've done farming, right? This didn't work last time. Why are we doing it again? Well, we'll change a little bit and see if it works. You continue. You don't think you change as you're trying to pitch something to somebody, but you do every time. Or as you're trying to coerce somebody into getting you what you want, you change your pitch, you change your attitude, you change your verbiage, and maybe even the ask a little bit. But what's at the end? You change it to appease everybody, and eventually you will get small successes. That's all it really is. And that doesn't matter if it's local politics or national politics. They work the same way. There's not a lot of difference. You got to remember, everybody that's up there came from somebody's local hometown.
Exactly. Well, and
they're
you guys
not any different than me or you.
Yeah, and you guys have such great staff to help you, and they function the same way we do in the sense of my goal, Laura's goal, Adam's goal, Katie, I guess you have a new one too. We need to know processes. We need to help you understand the rigmarole, the nonsense that things have to go through. But when it comes to content and who they're going to hear from, they listen to Laura because they know Laura hears from you. They listen to Kyle on our end because Kyle hears from our producers. The farmers make such a big impact. So I can't give kudos enough to you guys for being willing to go, but you're so right. That third lap, that's what us staffers are for, to give you a nudge, not because we're trying to pester, not because it's your turn. It's because we know we can talk to them till we're blue in the face, but we are not the farmer. And when that farmer says the same verbiage, they're like, oh, that's where Renee got that. Oh, that's where Laura heard that. This is not just something they're trying to get done. This is what the farmers need. That's my constituents. I mean, you're exactly right. And so I think it's the perfect time to give a good applaud to y'all's staff because you have wonderful farmer leaders, but they are absolutely groomed to be there on the right moment to give the right statement to the right person because it's intimidating. DC's intimidating. So what cool mentorship you had from your guy that was there and the previous farm owner and then also from your staff. It's just a really neat full circle story. I love that.
Yeah, our staff is amazing. I tell people, I think I've got another year left as president. And they're like, well, I don't know if I'm doing enough. What should I do? And I said, believe me, if you need to do something, Laura will let you know.
Whether you're ready or not.
Because they are perfect at picking and plucking that person and going, hey, it's your turn. This is what you need to go do. and because they it's their job, right? They're supposed to be watching all of these geopolitical things that are happening in ag and around the world because a farmer doesn't have time.
Yes, exactly.
To listen to every podcast and listen to every news article, read every news article and be on the internet. And I don't even listen to a grain marketing commentary daily because I don't have time.
Right.
I wish I did, but by the time I get up at 5 and kids are all out the door and I get through the things I need to in the morning and workers show up at 7, it's lunchtime. You go, man, I wonder what the market's doing today, right?
Right.
I need a ding on my phone that's 1 second, real quick, fast, and you move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just extremely humbling to watch some of those staff people work, have people in the right place at the right time, and understand it while they're doing it.
Yes.
Because it shows you that you're not just doing it alone. They're doing more than you are at times, for sure. And to help and to put people in the right place they do a really good job of it. Ours do a great job. We've got states bordering us that have great people do a great job. And so these things that take place, these call to actions to get people to respond, would not happen without those staff members in those places. There's no way it would happen. because us as farmers wouldn't organize good enough, or nobody would let us know. It just wouldn't happen.
Right. Yeah.
So they do an awesome job.
For sure. Well, hey, Josh, we don't want to take up any more of your time. We have locked you in. And as we already said, there really isn't an off season. As much as some people like to joke, us cattlemen love to joke that you guys don't have anything to do in the winter while we're feeding hay in the mud. But that could not be further from the truth. I will admit that's not the truth. But no, we don't want to take up too much of your time. But I do want to say, make sure you tell your wife, Miss Lancaster was my ag teacher at Caldwell County High School. So give her a little shout out. Tell her Renee Laurent. I'm a Carrico now, but tell her I said, hey, we loved her. And it's always good to see you guys when we're out. But thank you again. We just can't thank you enough. I know me and Matt enjoy. It is a weird week, being around the holidays and everything, but we love catching up with farmers and remembering there is something fun going on in other places, even though it feels a little gloomy up here some days. So we appreciate you.
Yep, you're entirely welcome. I've enjoyed it, and wish y'all a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, all good stuff.
All right, awesome. And we will see you at Commodity Conference, man. Thank you so much, and thank you, listeners. Be sure to subscribe to our larger podcast, Kentucky Farm Life, and we'll see you next time on Between the Rows.